Southern California, good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Today we have ourselves quite a show, as we have a lot to get into in the world of Southern California sports, such as the Rams, barely beating the Giants in ugly fashion, but they got the job done, and they made the playoffs. Can they get the 6th seed and possibly avoid a date with the Dallas Cowboys, or will they be facing them boys in AT&T Stadium? And the Chargers, unfortunately, lost in droll fashion, as in typical Chargers fashion without Justin Herbert, they just did not look right offensively. Don't worry, the season is almost over, as this week they host Kansas City. And the Lakers, speaking of struggling, have been absolutely dreadful. They have lost 9 of their last 12, and there's been some disconnect in the locker room. Is it Darvin Ham's time to go? Also, UCLA women's basketball takes down USC, which was pretty impressive in the battle of unbeatens and 2 top 10 teams. Are the Bruins for real as the number 2 team in the nation, and what does USC need to do in order to bounce back? All that and more here on the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Friday afternoon, Friday morning, Friday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you've made your way into episode 162 of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. And without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, the SoCal Supreme Sports Show would not be live without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on Spreaker. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on several different social media platforms such as X, formerly known as Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok at IE Sports Radio. We also have a Facebook page for those that still use Facebook. All you just have to do is type in the word IE Sports and Radio in the search bar, like us, and then that's how you're able to follow us. And we also have a website, www.iesportsradio.com, which is updated daily for all your latest sports news, our blog, our Hall of Fame, our Fans of the Month, our pages dedicated to each podcast, such as the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, our community forum, and our merchandise shop. For the past 9 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. A huge shout to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, the single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, it's low in sugar, and high in protein. This is some of the best jerky you can get your hands on, and all you have to do is visit www.planetjerky.net and place your order. In addition, prices are slashed for the time being, so if you go on planetjerky.net, you'll see prices that are like half off or 25% off, so get them while they last. And if you have an order of $50 or more, you'll get the shipping for free. Also, if you go to Planet Jerky's Instagram and message them at Planet Jerky, you will be entered into a raffle as long as you tell them that you heard about them on one of our shows on IE Sports Radio. You'll be entered into a raffle to get 2 bags of Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Once again, a huge shout to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet. And the way you can follow the SoCal Supreme Sports Show on social media is on X, formerly known as Twitter, at SoCal Show IESR. And you can follow me, Teran Rodriguez, mainly on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Teran Rodriguez 1. And without any further delay, let us begin. So, Happy New Year to everybody. I hope everyone had a safe New Year. And I'm hoping for the best when it comes to this year, 2024, in terms of SoCal sports. But let's get on into it. Let's jump on into it like a cold pool on a winter day after some hail. You feel? Alright, so let's talk about them Rams first, because the Rams are probably the biggest bright spot, and NFL is king. Alright, so the Rams had themselves quite an eventful Week 17 matchup against the New York Football Giants, and let's just say that it could have been a whole lot better, but it just goes to show that the Giants have nothing to play for, and when you're facing a team that has nothing to play for, that's the most dangerous. So the Rams eventually went up by as many as 10. They actually led 14-10 at halftime. They had 3 touchdowns from Kyren Williams, 2 going into the third quarter. But unfortunately, Lucas Haversick missed the extra point, which is no bueno for the Rams. So they're only up 20-10. The Giants did go down the field and they scored a touchdown. It was an 80-yard touchdown pass from Tyrod Taylor to Darius Slayton. And just like the Rams, the Giants missed the extra point because Mason Crosby can't kick it straight. So eventually Mason Crosby did boot a 32-yard field goal. So it was 2019 in the early stages of the fourth quarter. But after that field goal, the Rams went down the field and Kyren Williams scored a touchdown, his third of the day. But in typical Rams fashion, the extra point was missed. So instead of being up 27-19, they're up 26-19. So it was, both teams just struggled to score in the fourth quarter until about the 3.5 mark of the fourth quarter when Gunnar Olszewski had a 94-yard kickoff return or punt return touchdown. So special teams has really been the Rams' Achilles heel, and that is just no good. Their kicking game is awful. Their punt return game is awful. And then them preventing teams from having preventing punt return touchdowns is awful. So it looked as if the Rams were about to get beaten, and the Giants scored that 94-yard punt return touchdown. But instead of going for the extra point, the Giants go for 2. Now, I understand them going for 2 just because you play to win the game, and you don't want to risk Mason Crosby botching a kick. So they went for 2, and Tyrod Taylor threw the ball over to Saquon Barkley, but Saquon Barkley dropped the ball. He had no one in front of him, and that was an easy pass, and unfortunately, in Giants fashion, Barkley dropped it. So the Rams got the ball, and they unfortunately punted. They eventually punted. If not, they went 3 and out. And the Giants had to go down the field and get one more score, whether it's a field goal or a touchdown. And eventually they did, because Tyrod Taylor, this dude had so much terrain open, he just ran it all the way to field goal range. Fortunately for the Rams, they were able to back up the Giants, whether it was via stops or penalties, probably the former of the two. So all Mason Crosby needed to do was kick the field goal, and the Giants would stun the Rams, which, man. But, unfortunately, Mason Crosby missed a 54-yard field goal as that went wide left, and that's how the Rams hung on. So this was such an ugly game for the Rams for the most part. Like, this cannot happen. Like, if the Rams want to go deep in the playoffs, they have to actually, close out games. And that seems to be the third straight opponent that the Rams have basically kept in the game and have allowed to almost come back. And as a result, they managed to almost get nipped in the butt. Fortunately for the Rams, they hung on because Kyren Williams had 3 rushing touchdowns, which was big time right there. That was pretty good on his behalf. He also had 87 rushing yards. Matthew Stafford threw a touchdown and had 317 passing yards, but he had 2 interceptions. And Puka Nacua continued his amazing rookie year. He had 118 receiving yards on 5 receptions. So for the Rams, they also got some help from the Pittsburgh Steelers, as the Steelers managed to beat the Seahawks, and the Rams are in the playoffs. So Big time for the Rams as they no longer have to play their stars in Week 18 against the San Francisco 49ers, who also clinched the number 1 seed in the NFC. So for the Rams, it's a good win. Winning on the road isn't easy, and it's an ugly win, blowout win. The win doesn't matter. As long as you win, it's kind of what truly matters. But unfortunately, the Rams have really got to learn to put away opponents sooner rather than later. It's basically almost like seeing the Chargers 2.0. But the fact that the Rams have been winning and eventually be closing these games out, is a testament to how good they truly are. And how they've really stepped up the rebuild process after their Super Bowl and after their debacle last year. So they're 9-7. Currently, the Rams sit in 6th place in the NFC, and that's a good and bad thing, because if the playoffs started today, the Rams would play the Detroit Lions, and oh baby, people would love to have that matchup. Unfortunately, if the Rams manage to lose this week and the Packers win this week, then the Rams drop from the number 6 seed to the number 7 seed, and they'd have to play at the Dallas Cowboys, which, playing at Jerry World is such a droll experience for the Rams. And especially since the O-line is just not up to snuff. And although the Cowboys have been kind of inconsistent as of late, I still think that's a bad matchup for the Rams. I think the Rams match up so much better against the Lions than they do against the Cowboys. But time will tell as the Rams close out the regular season against the San Francisco 49ers at Santa Clara at Levi's Stadium. So the thing about the Rams is that they're going to be resting all their starters except for Puka Nacua, who only needs, I think, 24 receiving yards and 4 receptions to basically break the rookie, or he actually needs 29 yards of the rookie receiving yards record. And he also needs 4 receptions for the rookie receiving receptions record. But some of the Rams' rookies have been stepping up. Kobe Turner leads all rookies with 9 sacks. Byron Young is second amongst those rookies with 7 sacks. And like I mentioned about Puka Nacua, he is 29 yards shy of the rookie receiving yards record. Hence why Sean McVay is actually playing Puka and not resting him, which I think is good. Have Puka Nacua make some history. And I think that'd be awesome just because he's had such an amazing year and he was such a steal. And he is kind of the left-hand man for Cooper Kupp, which I think is excellent. And on the other side for the Niners, they will be resting their starters as well, as Christian McCaffrey actually got hurt in the Washington Commanders game last week. They're obviously resting Brock Purdy. I imagine they're going to be resting all their starters, or at least limiting some starters. Just because they don't want to lose any players or have a Brandon Staley moment like last year where they played their starters and they wound up paying the price. So for the Niners, this could be, they have nothing really to play for, which is kind of good because the Rams can hopefully go all in. However, the Rams are resting Matthew Stafford, Kyron Williams, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee's out with injury, Joe Notaboom is out due to injury as well. Aaron Donald's resting as well. So for the Rams, I really want them to get that 6th seed. I'd rather them play the Lions because I don't see the Cowboys losing to the Commanders. And what really sucks about the Eagles is that the Eagles wound up losing to the Cardinals and the Lions, the Lions wound up losing to the Cowboys. Now the Cowboys have the 2 seed. The Lions have the 3 seed, and the Eagles are the 5 seed because now the Eagles have lost the NFC crown, or the NFC East crown. So the only way the Eagles jump the Cowboys in terms of the standings is if the Eagles win and the Cowboys lose. So great job, Eagles. Way to make it so tough for the Rams in terms of their first-round opponent. But the Rams kind of done this to themselves, and it sucks because had the Rams beaten the Ravens, that would have been so amazing. Not just for the Rams, but for other teams as well. But for the Rams, they've actually won 6 of their last 7. I was going to say 4 of their last 5, but 6 of their last 7 ever since they got embarrassed by the Packers. So for this week's matchup against the Niners, the Rams are starting Carson Wentz, who kind of was a part of the Jared Goff deal. That being said, look, I'd really like to see the Rams pull out a win. I'd really want to see them locking up the 6th seed. Because if they get the 6th seed, I'm 99% certain the Lions are locked in. Unless, of course, the Lions win against the Vikings, and then the Cowboys lose, which would flip-flop those two teams, which would not be bad. So, look, if the Rams win and the Lions... I'm just basing this off of possible scenario. The best case scenario and the most likely scenario. So, look, I really want to see the Rams take on the Lions. I think everyone would like to see the Rams take on the Lions, just because Jared Goff versus his former team and Matthew Stafford versus his former team. And that's just the best ideal matchup for the Rams, because if they get the Cowboys, it's going to be so tough. I mean, Deron Bland covering Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua. I imagine what would happen if they had Quandre Diggs. I think that's the Diggs that's on the Cowboys. Because Stephon, I know, is on the Bills. Quandre is on the Cowboys. And then there's another Diggs on the Seahawks. But regardless, for the Rams-Niners game, I have the Rams winning, believe it or not. I mean, it's going to be the battle of the backups, except for Puka. And maybe some of the starters, the young starters for the Rams defense. Because the Rams are going to need to get some repetitions in to help their defense close out games. Because, like I've been mentioning the last few shows, the Rams have one of the most inexperienced defenses, and it shows at times. It shows that the defense just lets up on the gas, and they allow these offenses to get back in it. So I really think the Rams have a shot. I mean, the Niners, on the other hand, they're starting former USC quarterback and San Clemente High School quarterback Sam Darnold. So that's kind of who the Niners have in store for the Rams. But I just want to see the Rams get that 6th seed. I don't trust Washington to beat the Cowboys. And I don't really trust the Vikings to really beat the Lions, just because the Vikings laid such a goose egg on Sunday Night Football this past weekend. So, for the Rams-Niners, I'm going to say the Rams win. They also just signed Brett Maher to their practice squad. I'm going to say the Rams win 13-10. It's going to be one of those games, if not maybe 17-14. It's going to be one of those games. And for the Rams, it's just all about them putting up more points. At least let's get Puka Nacua his receiving yards record and his receptions record. Because if he does that, then he might be a shoo-in for the NFC Offensive Rookie of the Year. Or Offensive Rookie of the Year in general, just because I don't think there is an NFC or AFC. Either way, Puka Nacua has I think he has the most NFC Offensive Rookies of the Year for the season, or Offensive Rookies of the Year in general. But all in all, this weekend, if he even has a big game with Carson Wentz as his quarterback, I think that's a lock for him as well, especially since he's just had a stellar year, and nothing against C.J. Stroud of the Texans, but Puka, I don't think, has missed a game, and he's even played hurt. I mean, I know you still want to hold out. The Texans need to hold out C.J. Stroud, but Puka is just proving himself as a massive steal, because everyone knew C.J. Stroud was going to be big, but no one predicted Puka Nacua coming out of nowhere and just being the wide receiver 2, if not the wide receiver 1, with Cooper Kupp having been out the first 4 weeks of the season, because he was on IR. But for Puka Nacua, I would not be surprised if he was the Offensive Rookie of the Year. Maybe he and Stroud share it, but I just like Puka's chances, especially if he breaks that receiving yards record. So there we have it. in terms of the Rams, as I got to give a shout to the chat room. Jen B, Patty Bax, Marcus Losgrade, and Larry B all in the chat room. Larry B says, show 162, where does the time go? And he also says, also, I hate the Lakers. Yeah, that'll be for a little bit later. So that is pretty much that for the Rams. Like I said, I have them winning at least by 3, whether it's by 13-10 or 17-14. But regardless, I have the Rams at least squeaking out a win. It's going to be the ugliest win ever, but if they have to get that 6th seed, then they got to go full force. I just really hope that the Niners don't flash all their potential. Because if they do, then that's bad news Bears for the Rams. Or in this case, bad news Rams. So we'll see what happens going forward. Alright, but that's that for the Rams. Jumping over to the Chargers. Alright, I don't really need to discuss this game all too much. Excuse me for 1 second. Sorry, I had to clear my throat. But for the Chargers, I didn't even bother caring for this game. This was the kind of the equivalent of a preseason game. The Chargers didn't start their starting quarterback, or their starting quarterback was out for the remainder of the year. And then the Broncos have benched their starting quarterback, Russell Wilson, which, looking at it now, the Broncos traded all those players and picks for Russell Wilson and a 4th-round pick. So now the Broncos are eventually, like I said last week, they're going to release Russell Wilson. And man, that is such a waste. What a waste of a gosh dang trade. And I think everyone and their mom's saying that the Broncos won the Russell Wilson trade. Nope, not even close. Anyway, so for this game, for the Chargers, long story short, they lost, which is no surprise. They lost 16-19. Their only scoring was just nothing but Cameron Dicker field goals. The offense was still led by Easton Stick, who was 24th for 38 with 220 yards. Some are saying that Easton Stick was the worst passing quarterback, or the worst starting quarterback in Week 17. And it sucks because the Chargers don't have a good run game. Unfortunately, Austin Eckler only had 46 rushing yards. No Keenan Allen, no Joshua Palmer, so you have that as well. The leading receiver for the Chargers was Alex Erickson, who signed on as a practice squad member and now has kind of settled in as a starter. He had 98 receiving yards, which I guess is pretty good. Gerald Everett was second with 31 receiving yards, and then Quentin Johnston had 29. Ugh, talk about such a disappointing rookie year. But the only bright spot of this game was Cameron Dicker, and I really feel horrible that Cameron Dicker was not voted in a Pro Bowler. I really think he deserves it because he is 100% on his extra points, hoping he continues that trend in Week 18. And he has, I think he has like a 95% kicking, of 95% field goal completion rate, which I think is pretty darn good. Unfortunately, one of his field goals this weekend did get blocked, which kind of summarizes the Chargers season altogether. But for this game, it was just bad. It was just bad for the Chargers, and the fact that they made Jarrett Stidham look like Peyton Manning, okay, maybe not that much, but still, the fact that they just made the Broncos look like world beaters just looked amazing. It was just absolutely disgusting. And I've never even heard of this receiver, but they made Lil Jordan Humphrey. I didn't even think that was his name. It's like, Lil Jordan Humphrey? Who is that? But Lil Jordan Humphrey led the Broncos in receiving yards with 69, nice, and a receiving touchdown. That was the only touchdown of the game. Without that touchdown, it's 9-9, and probably the Chargers and Broncos are going to penalty kicks. But unfortunately, long story short, you didn't miss much. The Chargers' offense was droll. The defense still missed Joey Bosa, as he did practice in some capacity. The only good thing outside of Cameron Dicker was Khalil Mack getting his 100th career sack, which was outstanding. And he and Keenan Allen got voted to the Pro Bowl, and I think Derwin James did as well. I think it was just Keenan Allen and Khalil Mack. Derwin James, I think, is a Pro Bowl alternate. I still think Cameron Dicker should have been a Pro Bowler. Gosh, dang it. I hate how the AFC has a lot of good kickers. The Rams could maybe use that as well. Anyway, so for the Chargers, they fell to 5-11. That's the bad news. The good news is they have the number 6 pick of the NFL draft. Now, I get it. Y'all are probably saying, oh my God, Teran, we don't care about that. Well, it's kind of what the Chargers have going for them, just because, well, they don't have much going for them. They're the second worst team in the AFC behind New England. That's how bad the Chargers are. And it's even worse that that us Chargers fans, such as myself, are actually rooting for teams to win, like the Titans and the Giants and the Commanders and the Cardinals and the Patriots, just so we can see the Chargers get a better draft pick, when I'd rather see the Chargers vie for a playoff spot. But it is what it is. So the Chargers close out the regular season against the Kansas City Chiefs. So just like the Niners, the Chiefs have nothing really to play for, as they are locked. I think they're locked in terms of their seeding. Yeah, they're 10-6, but wouldn't they have the tiebreaker over Miami? Anyway, so yeah, they could actually improve their playoff standing, but the way I see it, the Bills could also fall further in terms of the standings. So regardless, I'm seeing the Chiefs. I just saw that the Chiefs are resting their starters, so it's going to be the Chargers backup, the Chargers A/B team versus the Chiefs B and C team. The Chiefs have nothing really. Like, the Chiefs clinched the AFC West last week, so the Chiefs can't. The Chiefs can only go further up, but I don't really see the Chargers winning. I mean, if they only put up 9 points against the Broncos, although the Broncos have a solid defense, not the greatest defense, but a solid defense. But if they can only put up 9 points against the Broncos and their kind of backup team, I don't know how they're going to beat the Chiefs. I mean, nothing against Easton Stick. I like the story. I'm glad he's getting his start. But he is just not Justin Herbert. Let's just get that out of the way. And the Chargers' run game is just non-existent. And it sucks because I think Keenan Allen is one of the more... Or not Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen has been a bright spot. And he's still top 10 in receiving yards. But Austin Eckler has just been a pretty big disappointment in terms of the Chargers. Like, if I had to pick most disappointing player on the team, I'd maybe give that to Austin Eckler. And I know he hasn't been right ever since the Miami game. I know he missed the Titans game. I know he missed the Raiders game. And he also missed the Vikings game. But still, the fact that he just has been so lackluster is extremely disappointing. And I like Austin Eckler, and I really want him to stay a Charger, but I just don't think that the front office is going to be compelled to keep him. Because running backs... I don't want to say this in a negative way. You kind of build off the draft, according to my man Cale Henderson, host of Sin City Sports. But I feel maybe the Chargers need to build off the draft, get like running backs. And there was actually a scenario where the Chargers was going to trade, or was possibly going to trade Austin Eckler to the Bears for a second-round pick and maybe a fourth-round pick and Khalil Herbert. We'd have Herbert and Herbert. But I digress. In exchange, I think the teams were going to trade their seventh round picks, but it's just looking really doubtful that Austin Eckler is going to stay on the team. And I like Austin Eckler, but if he has that output, why keep him and why extend him? Because the Chargers are already in a massive amount of salary cap hell. Excuse my French, but the Chargers are in the worst situation in terms of their salary caps, and everyone was saying that about the Rams. But look at what they got. They got a Super Bowl out of it. But you've got lots of cap hits in terms of like Keenan Allen, I think Joey Bosa, Justin Herbert, and that's just the gist of it. Like, this team it's not like you're going to waive a couple players from your team, and then it's going to be, it's just all better now. No, it's not going to work like that. So, unfortunately for the Chargers, they're just in a very, very sticky situation, and sadly, they're just going to have to make some tough cuts. And as much as I don't want to say goodbye to some of those players, I really, really would like for the Chargers to have some of these players for as long can be. I just think it's for the best, just because you got to make your cuts, and you got to make sure you're at least under the salary cap, because the salary cap is going to go, I think it's going to go up, but the Chargers are still going to be well past the salary cap limit, which is no good. But all in all, for the Chargers, they're in a world full of hurt in terms of salary cap space. But as for this week against the Kansas City Chiefs, it's so tough to really think that the Chargers are going to win, especially since they only put up 9 points with Easton Stick. And all signs are pointing toward Keenan Allen not playing. I mean, if he does play, awesome. But if he doesn't, then so be it. From what I heard, here's the Chargers game status. So questionable: Dean Leonard, Tanner Muse, Stone Smart, and Tuli Tuipulotu. Oh no, not Tuli. Doubtful is Kenneth Murray Jr. and Zion Johnson. Oh, great. And then out is Keenan Allen, Joey Bosa, Justin Hollins, and Nick Williams. So, okay, well, at least Joshua Palmer is not on the injury list. So it looks like he's cleared concussion protocol, and he's going to be playing this week, which I think that's at least some sort of relief. Though that doesn't really change all too much. He's been limited in practice on Wednesday and Thursday, so I guess that's a good thing. I guess he cleared concussion protocol, and yeah, the Chargers are going to basically try. Their best receiver is going to be Joshua Palmer. But I guess it's kind of an improvement over Quentin Johnston. And I hate to rag on Quentin Johnston, but it's looking like that is becoming a not-so-good pick, especially since Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison have basically flourished. I mean, Jordan Addison would have flourished even more had Kirk Cousins not gotten hurt, but I digress. Anyway, so Keenan Allen is out, Joey Bosa is out, Justin Hollins is out, Nick Williams is out, Mike Williams is he's been out ever since week 3. Justin Herbert's been out ever since the first Broncos game. So, yeah. But as for the Chargers, I have the Chargers losing, and this is kind of for best interests. It's nothing personal, but I have the Chargers losing 13-12. I think that's kind of the best case scenario. And if the Chargers were to lose by 3 points or fewer, then the Chargers would actually tie the Houston Oilers record for the Houston Oilers losses by 3 or less points back when the Houston Oilers were the Houston Oilers. Now they're the Tennessee Titans, if I'm correct. If not, they're the Houston Texans. But either way, I think the Chargers lose 13-12. It's going to be one of those ugly games, and at least the Chiefs have the playoffs to look forward to. The Chargers, on the other hand, they just have the draft to look forward to. And again, I don't want to see the Chargers lose, but for purposes of they need to get a better draft pick and who they're going to draft, like maybe Brock Bowers, or maybe they trade up. If that were the case, then, oh man, that would be quite fascinating. But it makes no sense for them to get the number 1 pick and trade away draft capital and players just to basically take a wide receiver. Yeah, and Larry B confirms it in the chat room. He says they're the Tennessee Titans. The Houston Oilers are the Tennessee Titans. So, thank you, Larry. But either way, I think the Chargers will tie the Houston Oilers record, aka the former Tennessee Titans, or the current Tennessee Titans 3 or less loss point record. So there you have it. And this kind of makes me wonder, who are the Chargers going to get as their head coach? So obviously the rumor is Jim Harbaugh, which I hope that is the case. If not Bill Belichick, maybe Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. as long as the Chargers don't mess up on this, I think the Chargers should be fine. I was very disappointed that Tom Telesco, the former Chargers GM, did not hire Brian Daboll, because look at what Brian Daboll did with the Giants. He managed to win a playoff game, at least one playoff game. And he was the quarterback whisperer for Josh Allen back when he was the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. And maybe Brian Daboll, that could also be another good candidate. Maybe Brian Daboll steps down from the Giants head coach position. Maybe he just says, I'm done with this position. I don't want to be here anymore just because New York Giants. No offense to Giants fans. I'm not one to basically say that the Chargers are better than the Giants, but still. But for the off chance Brian Daboll just resigns or he gets fired, that could also be another candidate for the Chargers in terms of hiring a head coach. I think that would be beneficial. And what's worse is that Tom Telesco and Brian Daboll actually went to the same high school. And the fact that Tom Telesco just did not hire Brian Daboll is baffling. He should have known that. But I feel the Chargers were just trying to copy-paste the Rams. And that's just not healthy when you're trying to copy-paste somebody. I mean, the Chiefs tried to do that with the Patriot way, and look at what happened. It backfired. And then they just basically went their own direction and just said, let's just do our own thing, and look at what's happened to the Chiefs now. They're a lean, mean AFC team machine. But that's basically it for the Chargers, and hopefully there will be some hope as Gen B and Larry are talking about it in terms of their teams in the chat room. I also got to give a shout to Ralph Calise. He says, enjoying the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, let's go. Ralph Calise is actually the host of our new Pittsburgh show, The Yinzer Report, which goes live every Tuesday, I want to say. Every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Time. Still trying to get used to Central Time and Eastern Time while I'm not on the West Coast. And Larry B says, I hope the Chargers are better next year. I hope so too, because they have such a great roster. They have their left tackle, their quarterback, and their defensive end or edge rusher, and they have them locked up. Well, Rashawn Slater's still on a rookie contract, but still, he'll eventually get signed to a big-time deal. So the fact that the Chargers need to swing for the fences and hit a home run in terms of their coach and their GM is kind of big right there. Now, the Chargers, in terms of their GM, I have heard the assistant GM of the Niners is a possible candidate for GM for the Chargers. I think it would be. I would totally like that. I think if he's able to do the job that he currently is with the Niners, I think there is the possibility of him maybe working his magic with the Chargers. And GM candidate, Adam Peters is his name, and everyone highlighted his resume, and I would really hope that the Chargers consider him. Because the Chargers GM job is kind of 50-50. You have probably one of the worst owners in the league in Dean Spanos, but you have a promising roster that is basically a few pieces away every single year, but still. But it's just a time will tell process, and I just would like to basically get at least a competent GM. Not that Tom Telesco wasn't competent, but the draft picks were just bad. The hiring of Brandon Staley was bad. And honestly, we just got to see where the chips fall in terms of the GMs. And it looks like Adam Peters is the best possible GM thing, or the GM hire for the Chargers. But according to Tyler Schoon, host of Guilty as Charged, the official Chargers podcast, but we'll see. It is a time will tell process, but that's going to do it for the football portion of the show. We don't have college football to discuss, just because I mean, I could go over the transfers, but I feel I'll put y'all to sleep. So let's discuss a little NCAA basketball. And, well, I just gotta say, USC is... their football team was disappointing, but their men's basketball team is just as disappointing. Yes, they beat Cal, but they only beat them by 8. And USC is basically... they're 7-7 with all that talent. You would think that USC would be a little bit better, but they aren't. And it sucks because I think USC is kind of making me wonder, should they get rid of Andy Enfield? I hope that's not the case, but in terms of the possibility of them not making the tournament, the NCAA tournament, not the NIT, I think maybe they do part ways with Andy Enfield, but it's going to have to be a reevaluation process. Sorry about that. But yeah, USC plays Stanford this Saturday, and Stanford's coming off of a big win. Well, they're coming off of 2 big wins, actually. Last year, see what I did there? They stomped all over Arizona, number 4 Arizona, 100-82. What is it with Stanford playing number 4 teams and beating them? I think it was like a couple years ago, Stanford beat number 4 USC when they were undefeated, and oh god, the officiating was just bad. I'm not going to get into it, but ugh. And then Stanford is coming off of another big win on the road against UCLA, which is a perfect segue to go into UCLA. So it's not that UCLA is more disappointing than USC, but USC had a lot more potential this year. UCLA was in a gigantic rebuild process, and now they have lost their 3rd straight home game. I think it's safe to say that the Northridge loss kind of broke them. And Larry says, USC makes me freaking mad. Oh, they make me mad too. UCLA losing to Stanford is also kind of, I mean, I wouldn't say disappointing, but losing at home has kind of been a little bit unnatural for the Bruins. Just because UCLA had one of the longest nation's home winning streaks before they lost to CSUN. And then they lost to Maryland, which was, I wouldn't say it was unacceptable, but it still was winnable, if you ask me. And then they now have lost to Stanford. The good news is for UCLA, they're playing the worst team in the Pac-12, being Cal. If UCLA can't win against Cal, then I think Mick Cronin has some questions to answer in terms of his job security. But I don't think it's all his fault. It's just that UCLA just has a massive rebuild in terms of roster. I would say UCLA is disappointing, like I said, but they didn't have high expectations like USC did. Everyone was lauding USC for their incoming class of 2023, having the number 1 recruit in Isaiah Collier, having Bronny James. The list goes on and on for USC. UCLA, everyone knew that they were going to be in a little bit of a rebuild process, and now they're in the midst of being 2 games below 500. But like I said, there's hope for UCLA. They play Cal, which if they can't win that, then we have problems. And he says UCLA beat USC. Well, that's in women's basketball. We're talking about men's basketball, which, I mean, we'll get on into that in a little bit beforehand. But there is some good happening in terms of Southern California basketball, as San Diego State, before the year ended, they managed to beat Gonzaga on the 29th, 84-74, which I was very impressed. And this was on the road, mind you. It's never easy to beat Gonzaga in Spokane, but the fact that San Diego State did that kind of means that they're still there. They're still here. Yes, they lost to Grand Canyon earlier in the season, which was actually the first time they've lost to Grand Canyon, and they lost to BYU, but BYU is good, and Grand Canyon, I want to say, is much better than most people are giving them credit for. Yes, they are 13-1, which is oof. And it was Grand Canyon's first ever win against a ranked opponent. So San Diego State unfortunately got caught in the trap right there. San Diego State is back in action this Saturday as they host UNLV. They won't get another challenge until they face until next week when they play New Mexico, and then after that they play Nevada, and then the 30th they're going to be on the road against Colorado State. So, it's going to be a big time matchup right there, and I'm looking forward to seeing what San Diego State could do. I think they're maybe the best team in college basketball in terms of Southern California hoops. But we also have the Big West Conference, which there are only two teams. Okay, there are four teams that are still undefeated. Two teams that are 3-0 and two teams that are 2-0. UC Irvine is the lone Southern California team that is 3-0, which is good. Obviously, Russell Turner does an excellent job with his team. CSUN is 2-0. UC Davis, which is not in SoCal, is 3-0. And then UC San Diego is 2-0. Now, I don't think UC San Diego is eligible for the Big West tournament, let alone the NCAA tournament, because they're still in the 4-year Division II to Division I transition period, which I think is a load of bologna sausage, if you ask me. But it's okay. But CSUN is still undefeated, which is making that loss a little bit more... Well, CSUN's still undefeated in terms of Big West Conference play, as CSUN took down Long Beach State last week, which is a big win if you ask me. That's not an easy opponent since Long Beach State has beaten the likes of Michigan, USC, DePaul, and Montana State. Those are some quality wins right there. So for Long Beach State to unfortunately lose to a Northridge team who also has some good wins as well, they beat UCLA, and they only have 3 losses on the season altogether, I think is pretty good. The only losses that CSUN has suffered against are Northern Colorado, Stanford, which crushed Arizona, and then Lemoyne, which... Is that even a Division I? Oh yeah, they are a Division I team. They are in the same division as, or the same conference as Fairleigh Dickinson. Yeah, go figure. Yeah, the same Fairleigh Dickinson that pulled off that amazing upset from last season in the NCAA tournament. But yeah, you know. All right, but that is kind of that for the Big West Conference right there. Right there and then. I don't really want to discuss the Big West Conference. It's kind of a train wreck, if you ask me. The West Coast Conference. I already talked about the Big West Conference, but the West Coast Conference is a massive train wreck. The best team from Southern California is San Diego, who is 10-6. LMU and Pepperdine are 7-8 and 7-9 respectively. And what those 3 teams have in common is that they all lost their conference opener. Oh, great. Oh, why do y'all have to be disappointing? At least for LMU. LMU is kind of a little disappointing as well, just because maybe they lost a few players to graduation, but I thought LMU would be a little bit better because they got one player from, I think, Harvard Westlake. If not, they got a somewhat good recruiting class. But, oh well. It is what it is, I guess. And maybe... Oh, no, Aaron McBride. He's from Corona Centennial. I think that's the guy that I'm thinking of, and not from Harvard Westlake. So, there you have it, in terms of NCAA men's basketball. So, jumping over to NCAA women's basketball, Larry says SoCal sports are disappointing. Well, this is why I'm hoping that this is just at least the beginning. I'm not like a running theme, because if this continues to bleed through all of 2024, then SoCal sports fans like myself are going to be in for a long year. And the Rams haven't been too disappointing. But as for UCLA and USC women's basketball, oh boy, that was a barn burner of a game to end the year, as UCLA beat USC 71-64. This was the number 2 Bruins taking on the number 6 Trojans, and I kind of had a feeling that the Bruins were going to come out on top. I feel UCLA is a little bit more battle-tested as of late, because they took on the likes of Florida State and Ohio State, whereas USC, they only scheduled locally, which is not ideal. Their last few games include San Diego, which bust, UC Riverside, bust, Cal State Fullerton, bust, Long Beach State, they only won by 8, but USC was shorthanded. They didn't have Rhea Marshall or Jada Juju Watkins. I was blanking on her name. Juju Watkins. But, yeah, when you compare the most recent competition that both teams have been playing as of late, it's no comparison. I think USC has only played one ranked team this season, and that was Ohio State, which is not ideal. I know they had another down-to-the-wire matchup against Penn State, which was undefeated at the time, but still, it's not ideal to basically have that bleh competition going into a big-time matchup against UCLA. But I hope for USC's sake, they continue to have this stellar year into the near future, and then they schedule a lot better instead of just scheduling local competition. But I digress. So for UCLA, their next matchup is against Oregon on Friday, and then USC also plays Oregon State, undefeated Oregon State, which, oh boy, the Pac-12 in women's basketball is so much better than it is in men's hoops. No offense to it, of course, but you look at all the ranked teams that there are. UCLA, which is number 2 in the nation. Colorado's number 5 in the nation. Stanford's number 8 in the nation. USC is number 9 in the nation. And Utah's number 15 in the nation. That is basically the conference. And David Crooks pops in the chat room. He says, what's good? And he says, both USC teams are on different paths now. Oh, yeah. The USC women's team is basically on the up and up, and they're looking super promising, while USC's men's basketball team is basically just been disappointing, and now we're all questioning the job security of Andy Enfield. But we all have to remember, Enfield got a contract extension in the offseason. I want to say it was this past offseason, which basically has him through till 2028. So, yeah. Any chance that they could reduce that contract to maybe 2026? But anyway, for USC women's hoops, they also play Oregon on Sunday. After they play Oregon, the following Sunday, they play UCLA at the Galen Center. And that's actually going to start a 3-game span where they face ranked opponents. And heck, they have a 3-game span right now, or a 5-game span, where they've got some pretty good opponents. Oregon State's undefeated. Oregon, while they're not as good as they were back when they had Sabrina Ionescu, if that's how it's pronounced, they're still pretty solid. I wouldn't say Oregon women's basketball is great by any means, not as of the past, but I would not be surprised if USC got a little bit of a run for their money against them. And that could be a big trap game because UCLA follows up that match against Oregon. But it's interesting that USC is getting USC and UCLA are getting their matches against one another out of the way, whereas rivalry week they wait till their final match of the season. But oh well, I digress. But after USC plays UCLA next Sunday, they play at Utah and at Colorado Friday and Saturday. That's going to really test them, and it'll also see if they are truly for real. I mean, yes, they beat Ohio State, but that was the first game of the season. I don't think Ohio State, outside of UCLA, has dropped any matches or any games. But it is what it is. I mean, this isn't Ohio. This is SoCal that I'm talking about. Oh, they did drop one match or one game. But c'est la vie. All right, but that's that for USC and UCLA. And then for the Big West, for the West Coast Conference, LMU got drubbed against San Francisco 63-38. And then Pepperdine wound up winning a thriller against San Diego 53-52, which does not say much. I mean, it says how close LMU and San Diego are in terms of the bottom. And Pepperdine is no better than LMU and San Diego, so let's move on. In terms of the Big West Conference for women's basketball, there are 3 teams that are still undefeated. UC Irvine and Cal Poly, which Cal Poly managed to beat Long Beach State last night, and then UC Irvine drubbed Fullerton 68-44. And then there's also Hawaii, but they're not SoCal. And in terms of overall record, there's only 3 teams that have a record of 500 or better: UC Irvine, Cal Poly, and UC Santa Barbara. And the most in terms of games above 500 is UC Irvine, which is 9-4, while Cal Poly is 7-6, and UC Santa Barbara is 8-5. Well, let's see how that lasts in terms of their records. And then San Diego State to round up all the I forgot CBU. I gotta get CBU in the fray. But first, San Diego State did drop a heartbreaker to Air Force, losing in overtime 71-63. That's kind of a not so good loss if you ask me. But before they ended the year, San Diego State defeated Colorado State in overtime 74-71, which is pretty good. That's a pretty good win right there. Unfortunately, they are now trailing the likes of Fresno State, Wyoming, UNLV, New Mexico in terms of the Mountain West Conference. So, yeah, that's basically it for the Mountain West. And yeah, I did forget about CBU. So in terms of the women's, the women's are looking really good. CBU women's team is looking extremely promising, and there was actually a projection that they were actually going to make the NCAA tournament, which, if that were to happen, boy howdy, that'd be awesome. And they're actually one of 3 teams that are still undefeated in the WAC. Their most recent game, they just stomped all over Utah Valley, 80-61. The Lady Lancers' next game is on Saturday at home against Seattle, which only has a whopping 1 win. And then the Lady Lancers play Tarleton State and Abilene Christian next week. They don't get a true challenge until they play Stephen F. Austin, which is one of those 3 teams that is still undefeated in the WAC. The other team is GCU. If CBU were to make the NCAA tournament, then I'll just say that this is a big, proud moment for CBU, because they managed to go from the NIT or the WNIT when they had that undefeated season up until they lost until then. And then last year when they won the CIT, which is hardware, don't judge everybody. And then I don't know if they partook in a tournament in 2022, but it's still very impressive that they go from invitational tournaments to the actual NCAA tournament. Do I think they'll win the NCAA tournament? Forgive me all for saying this, but no. I just think that there's too much talent across the board. And do we really trust them beating Iowa and Caitlin Clark in Iowa? No. Or South Carolina, or UCLA, or Colorado, or Stanford, or USC. I don't trust CBU beating those teams. I mean, CBU only has 1 loss on the year, which is awesome. I think that is impressive on their behalf. But it's just, they just don't have the dogs to basically take down a true blue blood. But that's going to basically do it for the women's basketball portion of the show, as well as the men's and women's college basketball portion of the show. When we come back, we're going to be discussing a little bit of hockey, and we're going to be giving out the first dum-dum of the week. So keep it locked here. You're listening to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
What's up, sports fans? You're listening to IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'm your favorite West Coast Wisconsinite, Bernie Bango, and if you're a cheesehead, come listen to my show, Big Cheese Sports, where we road trip around America's Dairyland, previewing, reviewing, predicting, debating, and digging into all that is Wisconsin sports at the college and pro levels. Join me on IE Sports Radio, Sundays at 1 p.m. Central Standard. Bernie out.
Well, what is up, Carolina Nation? This is John Felipe of the Carolina Cast, of course, the podcast of, by, and for the Carolinas, right here on IE Sports, your direct feed for all that is sports. And I'm reminding you to tune in Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern for the latest in Carolina sports, whether it's the Panthers that keep on pounding, the fly natures of the Hornets, the storming Hurricanes, the battle of the Blues with Duke and UNC, the fight of the Clemson Tigers, or the amazing atmosphere of any Carolina college. I'm talking App State, I'm talking ECU. I've got you covered. Once again, tune in for the Carolina Cast with me, John Felipe, Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
All right. Welcome to AZ Sports Daily. I'm your host, Kieran Daly, bringing the heat to Arizona sports. There's no discrimination here. We're going to talk about every sports team, professional and college. The show is all about you, the listener. I'm here to entertain you. Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here? It's going to be fun, high energy. You may not agree with what I say. That's okay. Let me hear you. Let's talk about it. Join me every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, right here on AZ Sports Daily. That's AZ Sports, Daily, and at IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows. A couple of them that you just heard will be on later on today, as Carolina Cast and Let's Whine About DMV Sports will be on in approximately, well, for Carolina Cast it'll be on in about less than 2 hours or so, if not maybe later, actually 3 hours. And then Let's Whine About DMV Sports will be on at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific time. So there's that. But let's get on into the second half of the show. So before we head on into the NHL, we actually have to discuss a little bit of UCLA football. So I talked about how USC hired their new defensive coordinator, Danton Lynn, the son of Anthony Lynn and the former UCLA defensive coordinator. But UCLA has hired its new defensive coordinator. So their new coordinator is, can we get a drum roll, please? Ikaika Malloy. Yes, Ikaika Malloy is the new defensive coordinator for the UCLA football team, which I think is pretty good. So he has more than 20 years of college coaching experience, and he spent the last 2 at UCLA. So he was actually the outside linebackers coach in 2022, and the unit grew to the defensive line in 2023. So Malloy has spent 5 years as the defensive coordinator, and he was also 2 as the co-leader of the University of Washington. Okay, I think that's decent, if you ask me. I think that's okay, as UCLA's Laiatu Latu was actually the first winner of the Lombardi Award. No, not the Lombardi Trophy, the Lombardi Award, as he was the nation's top lineman, and he was also named to the Ted Hendricks Award, presented to the country's best defensive end. And he was also named the Morris Trophy winner as well. And Latu is actually going to be declaring for the draft. So, unfortunately for Malloy, as much as I want to basically give him the credit, let me just say, does he have NFL experience? I mean, he has over 20 years of college experience, but D'Anton Lynn had NFL experience, and his father was a former NFL coach and a current coordinator. So Ikaika Malloy is going to have some big shoes to fill, since UCLA had one of the best defenses in the nation. I'm not kidding you. UCLA actually had one of the best defenses in the nation, sitting at second in rushing defense, as they held their opponents to only 80 yards per game, and they were third in tackles for loss with 8.1 per game, and they were fifth in team sacks with 3.31 per game, and 10th in total defense, holding teams to only 301 offensive yards per game. So that is a massive jump from the previous year. So Malloy has some big shoes to fill in terms of D'Anton Lynn, who is currently at USC. But I think it's possible that he's able to get the job done. I mean, at least he has experience on the defensive front. It's not like they hired somebody who has no experience whatsoever in terms of coaching, except on like maybe the high school level. But all in all, I'm interested to see where this will go for UCLA. They did get hit hard, like I said. Latu has declared for the NFL draft, which I think is cool. But UCLA still has they have those players that are diamonds in the rough. So we'll see what happens with UCLA football next year. But on that note, that's going to do it for that little bit of UCLA football news. All right, now let's get on into the NBA. All right, I forgot to mention the NBA. We're discussing a little NBA talk. So the Lakers have been absolutely dreadful. This past Wednesday, they lost to the Miami Heat 110-96. Now you're probably wondering, well, Miami's a solid team, Teran. Why is that a bad loss? Well, unfortunately for the Miami Heat, they did not have Jimmy Butler. But it was no problem for the Heat as they took down the Lakers. And now the Lakers are under 500. And the Lakers were so bad on Wednesday, they made Duncan Robinson look elite. They made him look like Larry Bird or Jason Williams with Mike Bibby combined. And Tyler Hero led the way with 21 points. They also made Jaime Jaquez, a player that the Lakers passed on, look extremely good. And here's the thing. The funny thing is that Jaime Jaquez was selected right after the Lakers selected Jalen Hood-Schifino. I almost forgot that the Lakers selected Jalen Hood-Schifino this year. But I really wanted the Lakers to get Jaime Jaquez. And this was something my brother and I were talking about. We were basically discussing that Jaime Jaquez was just so amazing. And I get it. Jaquez had a fantastic year at UCLA. He had a great time at UCLA. But I just don't know why the Lakers passed up on Jaime Jaquez. I mean, Jalen Hood-Schifino isn't bad. He has a good wingspan. But he certainly, I don't think he has moved the needle for the Lakers. But then again, I don't think a whole lot of players have moved the needle for the Lakers, just because the only two players that have basically come up big are Anthony Davis and LeBron James, both averaging 25 points per game, which is pretty good if you ask me. Jalen Hood-Schifino is barely averaging 2 points per game, which is extremely sad. And then Jaquez is averaging 13.8 points per game. But it also could be the system that the Lakers are currently in, because the Lakers just have a two-headed monster. But I will also just say that the Lakers have been they've been disappointing outside of LeBron and AD. The fact that AD is still healthy, where's some wood? I'm not anywhere near wood. Knock on wood. I hope I didn't jinx it, but regardless, the fact that AD is still healthy is quite amazing. One Laker who I think has definitely been a disappointment this year is Austin Reeves. Now, maybe Austin Reeves is feeling the pressure of being a superstar just because he was invited to the U.S. national team or some sort of team this past year, and he obviously had a breakout year last year in the Lakers' path to the Western Conference Finals. But I will say Austin Reeves just hasn't been his explosive self. I mean, he is averaging 15.3 points per game, which is good, and he's played in all 35 of the Lakers' games, which is solid, but he's only started 10, which I think, well, he has to kind of start because D'Angelo Russell is out, and a few of the other Lakers players are out. I think Rui Hachimura is also out, so that's the problem with the Lakers. They just aren't healthy, and now there's been a little bit of a disconnect in terms of the locker room, and now it's questioning the job security of Darvin Ham. And at this point, who do the Lakers hire as head coach? Like, it's going to basically be musical chairs, which I think is pretty funny. I mean, I hate what happened with Frank Vogel and how he led the Lakers to the championship post-COVID year or during the COVID year, but then after that, it was just a massive dud in terms of losing to the Suns in the first round and then just not making the playoffs altogether. But all in all, like, who would the Lakers want to hire? I mean, there was actually a caller on ESPN Los Angeles who actually said that the Lakers should get Monty Williams, the head coach of the Detroit Pistons, which, I mean, it's not a stretch, but I just don't think he would be the greatest cup of tea. Yeah? And John Felipe says, heard there was more distrust regarding Darvin Ham in the Lakers locker room. Yeah, distrust instead of disbandment in terms of the Lakers locker room. But it's not from Anthony Davis and LeBron James. They are go hung about Darvin Ham being the head coach, which is good. I'm glad it's not the LeBron and AD wanting Darvin Ham out. However, I'm interested to see which players are saying that Darvin Ham is basically the one that's basically disrupting and probably disbanding the Lakers locker room. So I'm hoping the Lakers can right the ship. The Lakers are back in action tonight against the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, the Grizzlies are much better than that record shows because they now have Ja Morant, who came back from his suspension. My hope is, and I'm glad Ja Morant is kind of getting his sea legs back into the NBA, but my hope is for Ja Morant is that he doesn't screw up. I mean, he has had gestures where he's done inappropriate things. I don't want to really say on the air, but all in all for the Lakers, I'm just hoping that they're able to get their you-know-what together, because Sunday they take on the Clippers, which is perfect segue to go into the Clippers, which have actually looked impressive. They actually beat the Heat on Monday, and they beat the Phoenix Suns on Wednesday. So the Clippers are really turning it around. I am quite surprised, if you ask me. And they are still 3 games back of the first spot, but there's still plenty of time for the Clippers to improve their number 4 standing in the Western Conference. So the Clippers tonight, they hit the road to the Big Easy to take on the New Orleans Pelicans. And then Sunday, they play the Lakers at the Crypto.com Arena. And then the day after, the Clippers host the Phoenix Suns. And then they also host the Toronto Raptors in Kawhi Leonard's former team. But I'm liking what the Clippers are showing me. I think the Clippers have really got together. Is it time to crown them as possible contenders for the championship? Not quite yet. I want to see if they could remain consistent because there's still a long season ahead of them, and they are still healthy for the most part. And I did find some wood, knock on wood. But for the Clippers, it's all about staying consistent with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Because if that's the case, if those two are still healthy and they get help from their bench, which is what the Lakers need, then the Clippers can definitely make the playoffs. And it's funny because most people were saying that they were going to be a last-place team because they don't see Kawhi Leonard and Paul George dragging this team to the finish line. But now they're currently first in the Pacific Division, and they're en route to making the playoffs without having to play in the play-in game. And actually, James Harden has kind of got his you-know-what together. So I will say the Clippers are looking a little bit more impressive by the day. But it's all about consistency all the way to the finish line. All right, but that is that for the NBA portion of the show. Let's jump on into some NHL. And once again, the Ducks continue to be disappointing. I know everyone's going to say, well, they beat the Golden Knights last Wednesday. Well, yeah, that's great and all, but how'd they follow that up? Oh, yeah, with a 2-0 loss to the Arizona Coyotes last Friday. Then a 7-2 loss to the Edmonton Oilers. Yeah, they lost by a touchdown. And then they lost in overtime to the Toronto Maple Leafs 2-1. And what's sad is that they actually got an amazing game from their goalie, Lucas Dostal. And he had 55 saves. And unfortunately, the Ducks let him down in overtime because Trevor Zegras turned the puck over. And eventually Toronto got the game-winning goal. And they lost at home, mind you, in overtime, after their goalie had 55 saves. I hope you're happy, Ducks. You wasted probably the best game from your goalie, which you'll probably get in a while, and now you're basically still second to last in the division. You're lucky San Jose is worse than you, because you're a much distant second to last to Calgary. Because at least Calgary and Edmonton still have a shot at making the playoffs. I know it's a little early to say playoffs, but still. I just don't think the Ducks are making the playoffs. Now, as for the Kings, they did lose to the Detroit Red Wings in a shootout last night, 4-3, which was their first game of the new year. They also lost to the Edmonton Oilers in a shootout, 3-2, and they lost to the Vegas Golden Knights last Thursday, 3-2 as well. So the Kings have also been on a 3-game losing streak. Oh, and they also lost to the Toronto Maple Leafs on Tuesday, so 4-game losing streak. The Kings head down to the nation's capital to take on the Washington Capitals on Sunday. Then they play the Tampa Bay Lightning at Tampa Bay on Tuesday. Then Thursday they are at the Florida Panthers. Then Saturday they are at the Detroit Red Wings. Next Saturday they're at the Detroit Red Wings. So the Kings are currently in third place in terms of the Pacific Division, but honestly, I mean, they look a little comfortable, but they just can't let these losses pile up. They just cannot have a Anaheim Ducks collapse, because if they do, they could be on the outside looking in. But I don't think that's going to happen because they're 7 points ahead of Edmonton and Calgary. They're 5 points ahead of Seattle, and they're only 3 points behind Vegas, who's second in the Pacific Division. And then Vancouver is only 5 points ahead of the Kings. So I think the Kings are still solid. It's just that they have to start winning a little bit more and stop breaking the Kings fans' hearts in a shootout. But I guess it's better than losing in overtime. But shootouts are kind of an icky way to lose a game. But it's all good. All right, but that is that for the NHL portion of the show. Before we head on out of here, we have to give out Dum Dum of the Week. So Dum Dum of the Week is basically an award I like to give out to, which basically no one is safe from. It can go to an organization or a person that basically did or said something dumb. Like I said, no one is safe from this award, and thankfully, for my sake, no one in our neck of the woods got Dum Dum of the Week, is going to be Dum Dum of the Week, just because no one decided to light fireworks a whole lot. But I have a few Dum Dums of the Week I have to give out. So this one starts on Sunday. So as well as the Chargers and Rams playing, there was actually something else that occurred. So I think most of y'all know that the Cat teams, two of the Cat teams are a little disappointing outside of the Detroit Lions. Well, three of the Cat teams are disappointing. The Bengals, the Panthers, and the Jaguars to an extent. The Jaguars are still leading the division, and they control their own destiny. But for the Jaguars, they had the honor of playing the Carolina Panthers, and I want to say this was in Carolina. And some people were saying that the Jacksonville Jaguars are probably going to lose that game because they've lost 4 in a row, and now they are basically, I wouldn't say they're not in control of their own destiny, but now they have the Colts and the Texans on their coattails. Fortunately, they did manage to win the week before. But this was actually in Jacksonville, so apparently the Panthers are so bad that, unfortunately, there's just a lot of turmoil. And John Felipe, I hope you don't take too much offense if you're still listening, but David Tepper, the owner of the Carolina Panthers, did something very, 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 very disappointing, if you ask me. So, the Jacksonville Jaguars were just owning the Carolina Panthers just because, yeah. But what David Tepper did was unacceptable. So, I guess because I don't know if he was arguing with a Jaguars fan or a Panthers fan, but David Tepper did something so egregious. He poured a drink on a fan, which resulted in him getting fined $300,000. Yeah, David Tepper, I think he's starting to become the new age Dan Snyder. I mean, yes, I can maybe say that Dean Spanos is a worse owner, but he at least has a bright future with the players that he has. And although he needs to move the team back to San Diego, as Larry B. pointed earlier in the chat room, David Tepper pouring a drink on somebody is unacceptable. And I don't know what was said. I don't know. From the video, it doesn't look like the fan reacted to him. It looks like the fan was just looking at the game, and then Tepper just pours a drink on him, and then he just leaves. So I'm glad the NFL fined David Tepper, but the fact that he only got $300,000 is unacceptable. And the fact that the Panthers have yet to issue an apology is just disappointing. I don't think they have issued an apology unless I'm missing something, but the fact that David Tepper did that is just so unacceptable. Yeah, I'm looking at the Panthers X, and I don't see a statement or an apology from David Tepper and whatnot. So I feel for Bryce Young. Like, he didn't ask for this situation. He basically is on a team that has no good receivers. Its defense is fairly leaky, and its owner is a complete D-bag, or as Adam Karnick once called him, an ass clown. And excuse my French for saying that, but still, the fact that Bryce Young is on this team, I want to come save him. I want to save him from the Carolina Panthers and have him be on at least a competent team with a competent owner, competent GM, and a competent roster that doesn't have Adam Thielen as their best receiver. But the Carolina Panthers, you have, just like the Chargers did with Justin Herbert, the Carolina Panthers failed Bryce Young, and their owner is basically a spineless coward, especially for what he did. So to David Tepper, not only was that unacceptable, throwing the drink on that one fan, but you failing Bryce Young, a very bright prospect who is only in his rookie year and now is being labeled as a possible bust, even though he's only a rookie, is basically asinine. So, David Tepper, you are the first dum-dum of the week for the 2024 year.
You are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
But wait, there's more dum-dums of the week. And this was basically a dum-dum of the week in a sequence. So, I don't know if any of y'all knew this, but last Saturday, there was a game that happened between the Detroit Lions, which was quarterbacked by former LA Ram Jared Goff, as well as there was a wide receiver by the name of, Amon-Ra St. Brown out of Mater Dei / USC. And then the Dallas Cowboys faced them. This was at AT&T Stadium, and it was such a great game, but the ending was so... Ugh. So, unfortunately, long story short, the Lions were down 20-13. They go down the field with about a minute and change left. They get the touchdown with about less than 30 seconds remaining, and Dan Campbell decides to go for 2. Now, I totally love this. I totally love that he decides to go for 2 and for the win. And to the delight of Lions fans, Jared Goff manages to throw the ball to, I forget the guy's first name, but it's Decker. Not Eric Decker, but Decker was the one that basically caught the 2-point conversion. And keep in mind, Taylor Decker is one of the offensive linemen, and he actually he told the referee that he's going to be reporting eligible, and he was the one that caught the 2-point conversion, and it was an amazing 2-point conversion. And it's quite rare to see a lineman get a 2-point conversion on any score, but unfortunately the refs threw the flag, and I think it was very late, and the call was illegal touching, that was the call, illegal touching by Taylor Decker, the one that was reported to be eligible. And it makes no sense. So that backed up the Lions 5 yards, and they went for 2 again, as opposed to kicking the extra point, and Jared Goff gets picked off. But there was actually I'm blanking on number 11's name, but Micah Parsons was the one that jumped offside, so it's half the distance of the goal as opposed to being 5 yards. So instead of going for the extra point, the Lions go for 2 again, and the Lions unfortunately whiff on the 2-point conversion, which unfortunately sucks for the Lions, but honestly, you kind of got to go for the extra point in that case. And also, Dan Campbell, this is kind of an extent of so much dum-dums. There was the officials that basically brain farted about Taylor Decker reporting. They basically said 768 was not eligible, but he reported himself as eligible, which is very sad. I hate how the game has to be decided by that, and I'm not one to really blame the refs, but honestly, that's such a missed call from the referees and the officials. And that's just a facepalm moment. But Dan Campbell not going for the extra point to basically tie and decide this in overtime is a little questionable. I mean, the Cowboys still had 3 timeouts, and all 3 of their timeouts, and they still had a little bit of time left to go down the field and get Brett Maher into field goal range. So we'll never know if the Cowboys would have gotten Brett Maher into field goal range. And with the game that one of their wide receivers had, CD Lamb, I almost said CJ. CD Lamb, with the game that CD Lamb was having, I don't know if the Cowboys, I think the Cowboys could have probably gotten into at least reasonable field goal range. But Mike McCarthy, on the last drive of the Cowboys, was doing questionable things. Yes, there was a questionable tripping call, but he was having Dak throw the ball. Why? Why are you having your quarterback throw the ball? All you just need to do is work the clock to your advantage. Because I don't know if the Lions would have had enough time to basically go down the field to score with limited time, as opposed to over a minute and a half. But it's still very, very questionable of what Mike McCarthy did of having Dak throw the ball. And then eventually they just got a field goal out of it. Yes, you want to go for the kill, or the first down, but the risk is not worth the reward, especially when it's 1st and 25. So there were a plethora of dum-dums of the week in terms of that Lions-Cowboys game. Mike McCarthy for managing the final drive poorly. Dan Campbell for basically going for 2 despite a 5-yard penalty. And then the officials for basically blowing how Taylor Decker was reported eligible, but then they penalize him for not being eligible. And that really had Dan Campbell in an outrage. I mean, I basically can't blame Dan Campbell for being mad and going for the win, but at that point, you basically have to go for the tie at the very least. Because getting 7 yards is, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but with the way the Cowboys defense is built and the way your quarterback is built with Jared Goff, it's just a little questionable. Now, if you had a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen or someone or a Lamar Jackson, maybe, but still. So to Dan Campbell and Mike McCarthy and the officials that blew that call and penalized Taylor Decker, y'all are dumb of the week, and y'all are super freaking stupid, because basically ref ball unfortunately reigned supreme. And I feel for Lions fans, but at the same time, you should have just taken the points. So Campbell, McCarthy, and the officials from the Lions-Cowboys game are dumb-dumbs of the week.
You are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
One more time.
So dumb. You are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
And that doesn't even deserve the Kawhi Leonard laugh. It does not deserve the Kawhi Leonard laugh. So it's just disappointing that game was decided by that de facto. But honestly, it is what it is sometimes. And hopefully for the Lions' sake, they don't have that. I mean, you definitely have to feel bad for Lions fans. This could have easily put them in the 2 seed. But now it makes me wonder, do they still have a chance for the 2 seed? But still, I mean, I would have liked to see, again, I still would like to see the Rams and the Lions face one another in the playoffs, but I don't think that's going to be happening. So time will tell, though. I just really hate that the game was decided off that. But it is what it is. All right, but that is going to do it for Dumb of the Week. And ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this week's episode of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to get on out of here, because I got to get me some grub. Yeah, dig? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I appreciate you. Shout out to the chat room, Larry B, John Felipe, Davidson Crooks, Jen B, and Marcus Losgreat, as well as Patty Back. Can't forget about her because she was listening. And also my brother, who is also listening at work every now and then. He deserves a lot of credit as well for listening in. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. I will be back next week at the same time, same place. But for set point, I will be back at 2 p.m. I think it will be 2 p.m. Central Time, which will be noon Pacific Time and 3 p.m. I don't know. I'm still trying to get used to this time. It'll be 2 p.m. Pacific Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Central. There we go. But with all that being said, thank you to everyone. Have yourself a great rest of the weekend. Enjoy the SoCal sports action. If you're a Chargers fan, don't worry. The season is almost over. You're almost free from the pain for this season. I will see you all on Monday for set point, like I said, at 2 p.m. Pacific Time, 5 p.m. Eastern. Have a great weekend, everybody. And remember, SoCal is for SoCal. Peace!